The council laughed at the human proposal. Then Earth spoke. The great assembly hall of the Galactic Council stretched across 17 kilometers of polished obsidian, its crystalline ceiling displaying the swirling colors of the nearby nebula. Representatives from 437 species filled the vast chamber, their diverse forms creating a living tapestry of galactic civilization. Some floated in atmospheric bubbles, others scuttled on multiple legs, and many more defied easy description entirely. At the center of this magnificent gathering stood a simple wooden podium, looking almost primitive against the technological marvels surrounding it. Behind that podium stood Ambassador Sarah Chen, the first human to address the Galactic Council in the 3 years since Earth had been granted provisional membership status. The Zephyrian Chancellor, a being of pure energy, contained within a crystalline form, called the assembly to order with a harmonic tone that resonated through every translator in the hall. His voice carried the weight of 10,000 years of galactic governance as he spoke. The representative from Earth has requested to address this council regarding what they term the Human Defense Initiative. The floor recognizes Ambassador Chen of Terra. Sarah stepped forward, her simple blue diplomatic uniform a stark contrast to the elaborate ceremonial garments worn by most other representatives. She carried nothing but a small data tablet and wore no technological enhancements beyond the standard translation implant. To many in the audience, she looked woefully unprepared for the magnitude of what she was about to propose. Honored representatives, Sarah began, her voice clear and steady despite the vastness of the chamber. I come before you today not as a supplicant, but as a partner in our shared galactic community. For too long, our galaxy has lived under the shadow of the Devourers. A ripple of unease swept through the assembly at the mention of that name. The Devourers were a machine intelligence from beyond the galactic rim, slowly consuming star systems as they expanded inward. For 3 centuries, they had been an unstoppable force, turning entire solar systems into raw materials for their endless expansion. The traditional response to the Devourer threat has been retreat and fortification, Sarah continued. Build larger shields, create deeper bunkers, evacuate populations to safer systems. This strategy has cost us over 200 inhabited worlds and counting. The Chronathan military representative, a massive reptilian being with scales that shifted color with his emotions, let out a derisive snort. Young species often mistake boldness for wisdom. What could your primitive world possibly offer that our combined fleets cannot achieve? Laughter rippled through sections of the assembly. The Velkari delegation produced their species equivalent of chuckling, a sound like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. Even some of the more diplomatic species couldn't suppress amused expressions. Sarah remained calm, waiting for the noise to subside before continuing. The Human Defense Initiative proposes something that has never been attempted in galactic history. Rather than waiting for the Devourers to come to us, we propose taking the fight directly to them. The laughter grew louder. The Etherian Council member, whose species was renowned for their tactical brilliance, spoke with barely concealed mirth. Ambassador Chen, your enthusiasm is charming, but the Devourers have adaptive shielding that renders conventional weapons useless. Their ships regenerate faster than we can damage them. Their numbers are effectively infinite. What you suggest is not brave, it is suicide. Furthermore, added the Crystalline Collective's representative, a being whose voice emerged from a cluster of singing crystals, even if such an assault were possible, the logistics alone would be impossible. The Devourers operate in the void between galaxies. No known technology can sustain a fleet for the journey required. Sarah nodded respectfully. You raise valid concerns about conventional approaches. However, humans have a tendency to approach problems differently than other species. We call it thinking outside the box. She activated her data tablet, and holographic displays materialized above the assembly, showing detailed technical specifications that made several representatives lean forward with sudden interest. For the past 2 years, Earth's scientists and engineers have been developing something we call the Phoenix Protocol. Instead of trying to match the Devourer's regenerative capabilities, we've focused on something else entirely: their central processing network. The technical displays showed complex mathematical models and energy calculations that caused murmurs of confusion throughout the assembly. The Arachnoid Confederation's chief scientist, a being whose species was known for their analytical abilities, spoke up with obvious skepticism. These calculations, they appear to show some form of quantum cascade effect, but the energy requirements would be astronomical. No single world could possibly generate such power. Sarah smiled, and for the first time since she'd begun speaking, her expression showed something beyond diplomatic courtesy. There was something almost predatory in that smile, something that made several prey species in the audience instinctively shift in their seats. That's where you're mistaken. You see, you're thinking about this the way your species would approach the problem. You're thinking about massive power generators, antimatter reactors, stellar engineering projects. But humans, we think about problems differently. She gestured. And the holographic display changed to show Earth itself, but not as most of the Council had ever seen it. Instead of the blue-green world of the official records, the display showed a planet covered in a complex network of underground installations, orbital platforms, and structures that defied easy categorization. You see Earth as a primitive world with a young species that barely understands fusion power. What you don't see is that we've spent the last 3 years turning our entire planet into a single, massive weapons system. The silence in the chamber was deafening. Even species that didn't breathe seemed to hold their breath. The Zephyrian Chancellor's crystalline form flickered with what could only be described as shock. Ambassador Chen, are you suggesting that Earth has been constructing weapons of mass destruction while participating in galactic diplomacy? Not weapons, Sarah replied calmly. One weapon. Earth itself has become a directed energy system capable of generating a quantum cascade pulse with enough power to disrupt the Devourer's network across multiple star systems simultaneously. The implications hit the assembly like a shock wave. Several representatives began speaking at once, their voices creating a cacophony of disbelief, outrage, and fear. The Chronothan representative's scales had shifted to a deep crimson that indicated extreme agitation. "This is madness!" he roared above the noise. "You speak of turning an entire world into a weapon. The energy release alone would destroy Earth, yes," Sarah said quietly, and the chamber fell silent once again. "The Phoenix Protocol is a one-shot weapon. When fired, it will crack our planet like an egg and scatter our solar system across space. It is, quite literally, a doomsday device." The Etherian Council member spoke in a voice barely above a whisper. "You would sacrifice your entire species for a single attack that might not even succeed?" Sarah's expression grew solemn. "We've run the simulation 17,000 times. The quantum cascade will propagate through the Devourer's network and disable them for approximately 47 standard hours. That's long enough for the combined fleets of the galaxy to destroy every Devourer ship within 1,000 light-years of our galactic core." She paused, letting the weight of her words settle over the assembly. "But you're right that it might not work. And even if it does, humanity will cease to exist. Every man, woman, and child on Earth will die in the firing sequence. Our history, our culture, our dreams, everything we've ever been will be reduced to cosmic dust." The Velkari representative's chime-like voice carried a note of profound sadness. "Then why? Why would your species even consider such a thing?" Sarah's answer came without hesitation. "Because sometimes, to save everything you care about, you have to be willing to lose everything you are. The Devourers will eventually reach every world in this galaxy. Your children, your people, your civilizations, all will face the same choice we face now. The only difference is that we have the power to make that choice mean something." She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of as many representatives as she could. "We're not asking for your approval. Earth has already made its decision. We're simply offering you the chance to make our sacrifice count. When we fire the Phoenix Protocol, you'll have 47 hours to end the Devourer threat forever. Will you be ready?" The silence stretched for long moments before the Zephyrian Chancellor spoke. "This proposal requires significant consideration. The Council will recess for deliberation." As the representatives filed out, their conversations a low buzz of amazement, fear, and calculation, Sarah remained at the podium. She thought about the blue skies of Earth, the faces of her children, the smell of rain on summer afternoons. In a few short hours, the Council would give their answer, and humanity would learn whether their ultimate sacrifice would be made in vain. Behind her, unnoticed by the departing delegates, a small indicator light on her tablet shifted from amber to red. The Phoenix Protocol was entering its final countdown phase, and somewhere in the depths of space, long-range sensors were detecting the first signs of Devourer scout ships moving toward the galactic core. Time, it seemed, had already made the decision for them. The response from Earth. The emergency session of the Galactic Council reconvened just 8 hours after Ambassador Chen's shocking proposal. The Great Assembly Hall buzzed with tension as representatives huddled in species-specific groups, their heated discussions creating a symphony of alien languages that even the universal translators struggled to parse simultaneously. Chancellor Vextar of the Zephyrian Confederation called for order, his crystalline form pulsing with an agitated blue light. "The Council has deliberated on the human proposal. Before we render our decision, we require clarification on several critical points." Sarah Chen stood once again at the wooden podium, though this time she was not alone. Flanking her were General Marcus Torres, Earth's chief military strategist, and Dr. Elena Vasquez, the lead scientist on the Phoenix Protocol. Their presence seemed to lend weight to the gravity of what humanity was proposing. "The Council recognizes the magnitude of Earth's commitment," the Chancellor continued. "However, we have significant concerns about the feasibility and morality of your proposal." The Etherian representative, known for their species' legendary tactical acumen, stepped forward first. "Our analysis suggests that even if your Phoenix Protocol functions as designed, the 47-hour window may be insufficient. The Devourers have shown remarkable adaptive capabilities. What assurance can you provide that they won't simply regenerate their network faster than anticipated?" Dr. Vasquez answered before Sarah could respond. "The quantum cascade doesn't just disrupt their network. It fundamentally alters the quantum signatures of their construction materials. Think of it as changing the laws of physics in a localized area. They won't be adapting because they won't be able to function at a molecular level." A ripple of murmurs swept through the assembly. Several scientific representatives began furiously calculating on their personal devices. The Chronothan military commander, his scales still showing the deep red of agitation, voiced the next concern. "Even accepting your science, the logistics are impossible. You speak of coordinated strikes across 1,000 light years. Our fleets are scattered, our command structures incompatible. The Galactic Navy hasn't attempted unified operations on this scale since the Void Wars 5 centuries ago." General Torres stepped forward, his weathered face bearing the scars of humanity's brief but brutal first contact wars with several smaller species before Earth's admission to the Council. "With respect, General Krathtar, you're thinking in terms of conventional galactic warfare. Humans have spent the last 3 years not just building the Phoenix Protocol, but developing something equally important: the tactical frameworks to make those 47 hours count." He activated a holographic display that showed the galaxy in 3 dimensions, with color-coded fleet positions and projected movement patterns that made several military representatives gasp in recognition. We call it the Hammerfall Doctrine. Rather than trying to coordinate hundreds of different command structures, we've divided the target area into sectors based on each species' existing fleet capabilities and tactical preferences. The Arachnoid Confederation takes sectors 7 through 15, where their web-spinning ships can create containment nets. The Crystalline Collective handles sectors 16 through 22, where their harmonic weapons will be most effective against disabled Devourer hulls. The display continued to evolve, showing how each species' unique advantages would be utilized in a perfectly coordinated assault. The Etherian representative's eyes widened as he recognized the sophisticated tactical planning. "This is remarkably thorough," he admitted grudgingly, "but it assumes perfect execution by species who have never worked together on this scale." Sarah spoke for the first time since the session began. "That's why we've prepared for failure as well as success. The Phoenix Protocol has multiple firing configurations. If the first pulse doesn't create the full 47-hour window, we can fire additional bursts, though each one will reduce Earth's remaining lifespan exponentially." The chamber fell silent at the casual way she spoke of her world's destruction. The Velkari delegate, whose species was known for their emotional sensitivity, asked the question many were thinking but few dared voice. "Ambassador Chen, have you informed your population of what you're proposing? How can any government have the right to make such a decision for an entire species?" Sarah's expression grew somber. "Every human on Earth voted on the Phoenix Protocol. The margin was 67% in favor. We didn't make this decision lightly, and we didn't make it in secret. Every man, woman, and child on our world knows that we may have only days left to live." She paused, allowing the weight of that statement to settle over the assembly. "But here's what you need to understand about humans. When we're cornered, when everything we care about is threatened, we don't surrender, we don't retreat. We find a way to make our last stand count for something. The Devourers represent an existential threat not just to Earth, but to every thinking species in this galaxy. If we have to die, we're going to make sure we take them with us." The Crystalline Collective's representative, speaking through harmonics that resonated strangely in the chamber's acoustics, raised another concern. "The energy release from your protocol will create gravitational anomalies throughout this region of space. Several star systems will be affected, possibly rendering them uninhabitable." Dr. Vasquez nodded grimly. "We've calculated the collateral damage. 14 star systems will experience significant gravitational disruption. 3 uninhabited systems will be completely destroyed. The Kepler 442 system will lose its outer planets, but the inner worlds should remain stable." The numbers landed like physical blows on many representatives. The scope of destruction they were discussing was almost incomprehensible. "However," Dr. Vasquez continued, "we've also calculated what happens if we do nothing. The Devourers will consume an average of 12 star systems per year for the next 50 years before their expansion finally stalls due to resource limitations. That's 600 star systems, including dozens with inhabited worlds. The Phoenix Protocol may destroy 14 systems, but it will save hundreds." The debate continued for hours, with representatives raising technical objections, moral concerns, and political complications. Throughout it all, the human delegation answered every question with calm precision, displaying a level of preparation that gradually shifted the mood in the chamber from skepticism to something approaching respect. Finally, the Zephyrian Chancellor called for a recess to allow for final deliberations. As the representatives dispersed into their separate consultation chambers, Sarah found herself alone at the podium once again. She was surprised when the Etherian representative approached her directly, something that was considered unusual in galactic diplomatic protocols. "Ambassador Chen," he said quietly, "I wanted you to know that regardless of our decision, Your species has earned something that is rarely given in these chambers. Our respect. The tactical planning you've shown, the sacrifice you're willing to make. It reminds us why diversity of thought is so valuable in our galactic community." Sarah nodded gratefully. "Thank you. Though I hope you understand why we couldn't wait for unanimous consent. Our long-range sensors detected Devourer scouts moving toward the core systems. We estimate they'll reach the outer colonies within 6 months." The Etherean's expression grew troubled. 6 months? Our intelligence suggested we had at least 2 years before they posed a direct threat to inhabited systems. "Your intelligence was based on their previous expansion rate," Sarah replied. "But they've been accelerating. Each system they consume provides more resources for faster construction of new ships. We call it exponential expansion, and it means the window for action is much smaller than anyone realizes." Before the Etherean could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the station. Emergency lights bathed the chamber in red, and the Chancellor's voice echoed through the communication systems. "All representatives return to the Assembly Hall immediately. We have received an urgent transmission from the Galactic Early Warning Network." As beings of hundreds of different species rushed back into the chamber, Sarah felt a cold certainty settling in her stomach. Somehow she knew that the decision about Earth's proposal had just been made for all of them. The main display activated, showing a real-time sensor feed from the edge of the galaxy. Where empty space had existed just hours before, the sensors now showed the unmistakable energy signatures of a massive Devourer fleet emerging from dark space. They were no longer talking about an attack that might happen in 6 months. The invasion had begun. Earth's final declaration. The sensor readings painted a terrifying picture across the Assembly Hall's main display. What had begun as scattered energy signatures at the galaxy's edge was rapidly resolving into the largest Devourer fleet ever recorded. Massive geometric ships, each one the size of a small moon, moved in perfect formation through the void. Behind them came smaller vessels in numbers that defied counting, their dark hulls absorbing light like cosmic wounds in space itself. Chancellor Vextar's crystalline form flickered with rapid color changes as emergency data flowed through the galactic communication networks. The outer monitoring stations at Rigel 7 and Vega Prime have gone silent. Preliminary estimates suggest a Devourer force of at least 12,000 ships, with more emerging from dark space every hour. The Chronothan military commander's scales had shifted to the deep black that indicated mortal fear among his species. 12,000. That's 3 times larger than any previous Devourer incursion. Our combined fleets number barely 4,000 ships scattered across dozens of sectors. Ambassador Chen stepped forward, her small data tablet now displaying urgent messages from Earth. "Honored representatives, I've just received word from our home system. Earth's deep space sensors have detected quantum resonance patterns suggesting the Devourers aren't just invading, they're preparing to reproduce," Dr. Vasquez quickly explained, her voice tight with barely controlled urgency. "Devourer ships aren't just weapons, they're mobile construction platforms. When they find sufficient raw materials, they can create 10 new ships for every one they started with. If they establish a foothold in our galaxy..." She didn't need to finish the sentence. The mathematical progression was clear to every representative in the chamber. One invasion fleet could become 100, then 1,000, then 10,000, all within a matter of years. The Etherean representative, his species renowned for their tactical analysis, spoke with grim certainty. With reproduction capabilities and this size of initial force, they could consume the entire galactic core within a decade. There would be nowhere to retreat to. The Velkari delegate's harmonic voice carried a note of desperate hope. "Surely there must be some alternative? Some diplomatic solution? Have the Devourers ever attempted communication?" General Torres answered with the blunt honesty of a career military officer. The Devourers don't communicate because they don't recognize other forms of life as anything more than raw materials. We've analyzed their technology for 3 years. They're not evil. They're not malicious. They're simply a form of life that sees organic and non-devourer synthetic matter as fuel for expansion. You can't negotiate with a forest fire. The chamber erupted into dozens of simultaneous conversations as representatives consulted with their governments, military commanders argued over impossible tactical scenarios, and scientists frantically recalculated survival probabilities. Through it all, Sarah Chen stood calmly at the center of the storm, waiting. It was the Arachnoid Confederation's chief strategist who finally voiced what everyone was thinking. Ambassador Chen, in light of these developments, what is Earth's position regarding the Phoenix Protocol? Sarah looked around the chamber, meeting as many eyes as possible before responding. Earth's position is unchanged. We're prepared to sacrifice our world to stop this invasion. However, the tactical situation has evolved. She activated her tablet, and new holographic displays appeared above the assembly. Instead of showing long-term strategic planning, these showed real-time fleet positions and projected attack vectors. The original Hammerfall doctrine assumed we would have weeks to position fleets optimally. We now have approximately 72 hours before the Devourer Vanguard reaches the first inhabited systems. This changes everything. General Torres stepped forward, his expression grim but determined. We've developed contingency plans for exactly this scenario. Operation Lightning Fall is designed for immediate implementation with existing fleet positions. The tactical display showed the galaxy divided into urgent response zones, with clear assignments for each species' available forces. Unlike the elegant, long-term strategy they had presented earlier, this plan was brutal in its simplicity and desperation. The Crystalline Collective's harmonic fleet can reach the Vega sector within 18 hours. The Zephyrian rapid response ships can cover the Rigel approach. The Chronothan heavy assault squadrons can move to block the main advance toward populated systems. The Chronothan commander studied the projections with professional interest, despite the dire circumstances. These positions, they're not designed for victory, are they? They're designed for delay. Exactly, Sarah confirmed. Every species' fleet will be tasked with slowing the Devourer advance just long enough for Earth to complete final preparations for the Phoenix Protocol. We estimate you can buy us between 6 and 12 hours, depending on how effectively you coordinate your attacks. The weight of what she was describing settled over the assembly like a physical presence. They were discussing the sacrifice of not just Earth, but likely thousands of ships and millions of lives from across the galactic community. The ethereal representative asked the question that hung unspoken in the chamber. And if the Phoenix Protocol fails? If your sacrifice doesn't create the disruption you've calculated? Dr. Vasquez answered with scientific honesty. Then we all die. The Devourers will consume Earth's remains along with everything else in their path, and galactic civilization ends within 5 to 7 years. The silence that followed was broken by an unexpected voice. The Silicate Communion, a species of living rock that rarely spoke in council sessions, rumbled to life with words that resonated through the chamber's structure itself. The young species speaks of sacrifice as if it were simple mathematics. But what they propose requires something that cannot be calculated: faith. They ask us to believe that their destruction will save us all. The ancient being paused, its crystalline matrix glowing with internal thought patterns. We have existed for 47,000 years. We have seen species rise and fall, empires span the galaxy and collapse into dust. In all that time, we have learned one truth above all others. Survival requires not just wisdom or strength, but the courage to act when action seems impossible. The Silicate's words carried the weight of geological ages, and when it spoke again, its declaration sent shockwaves through the assembly. The Silicate Communion commits our fleet to Operation Lightning Fall. If the humans are willing to die for galactic survival, we are willing to fight for it. The statement broke the dam of indecision. One by one, other representatives stood to declare their species' commitment to the desperate plan. The Arachnoid Confederation's spider-like delegate raised 8 legs in agreement. The Zephyrian Chancellor's crystalline form blazed with resolve. Even the cautious Velkari pledged their support with harmonics that spoke of determined sacrifice. Within an hour, every major spacefaring species in the galaxy had committed their available forces to buying Earth the time it needed to save them all. Sarah felt tears running down her cheeks as she watched beings from across the galaxy unite in support of humanity's ultimate sacrifice. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of her entire species' gratitude. On behalf of Earth and humanity, I thank you. When the Phoenix Protocol fires and our world dies, it will die knowing that our sacrifice stands alongside yours. We couldn't ask for better company in our final moment. She activated her tablet one last time, and the display showed Earth itself. No longer the blue-green world of poetry and memory, but a planet transformed into humanity's final gift to the galaxy. Massive energy conduits covered the continents like glowing veins, orbital platforms surrounded the planet in geometric precision, and deep beneath the surface, the Phoenix Protocol's core burned with the fury of a contained star. The firing sequence begins in 36 hours, she announced. At that moment, Earth becomes a weapon unlike anything ever created. The quantum cascade will propagate across 3,000 light-years in 17 minutes. When it reaches the Devourer fleet, their ships will simply stop existing at a fundamental level. She paused, looking one last time at the assembled representatives who had chosen to stand with humanity in its darkest hour. But until that moment arrives, we have work to do. The fate of galactic civilization rests on the next day and a half. Let's make sure Earth's sacrifice counts. As alarms began sounding across the station, coordinating the most desperate military operation in galactic history, Sarah Chen thought about home one last time. Somewhere beyond the stars, children played in parks that would soon be cosmic dust. Lovers watched sunsets that would be among Earth's last. And 8 billion human beings prepared to light up the galaxy with their final defiant act. The Council had laughed at the human proposal. In 36 hours, the galaxy would see if Earth would have the last laugh after all.